Hello and welcome back to another episode of Sitar Gurukul. In today's episode, we are not going to go through one more lesson. Instead, I'm going to create this new playlist where I'm going to invite some of my musician friends. Some of them are going to be instrumentalists, some of them are going to be vocalists, and we're going to talk about different aspects of how they perceive music and how what they think about before delivering it. So, right here in our studio today, we have my very dear friend, the violinist Sanghita Chakraborty. And today we are going to discuss only the elements that we have already discussed regarding Raga Yaman on the sitar. So, we are going to ask her and know more about her perception of the rag and also how she decides to play alap, and we're going to compare with the basic Yaman alap lines that we have discussed over here at our channel. And then we're also going to discuss a little bit of jor, and then maybe a little of vilambit, and so on and so forth. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our guest for today's session. Sangeeta, thank you so much for being in the show.
Thank you so much to you and Sitar Gurukul.
You're very welcome. I understand that you're also making this channel that has already been active for around 6 months called Violin and Gurukul, which is under the same project. There you already have your tutorial in 3 lessons. So the first thing that I want to know actually is that we traditionally, I remember seeing violins that are usually have 4 strings, but your one has 5. I want to know why does it have the extra string. Care to tell us?
Yeah, sure. Actually, many people ask me this thing that why does your violin have that one extra string? Actually, first of all, this 5 string violin was introduced in the world was, if I'm not wrong, he was Bobby Hicks. In one of his concert, he introduced that 5th string. And especially in Indian classical music, this string was introduced by Pandit Robin Ghosh in 1960. So, in a concert, Tansen Sangeet Samaroh, probably, which was held in Calcutta, he was also from our Maihar Gharana. He used to play a different tuning, Masa Pare. I play Pasa Pasa tuning, and especially the people or the style, Gayaki style, what they play, they mainly use the tuning Sapa Sapa. So they get Mandra Saptak Sa for their lower octaves, ragas, or the tones they want to play, and also a higher octave. They usually don't play the higher Atitar Saptak, but we can play according to the raga's mood. So this is the history or the events behind my 5 strings. So my Guruji, Shri Indradeep Ghosh, also plays 5 string violin, and he also has an interesting thing called tarab tar in violin. We usually see tarab in your sitar and
Sympathetic strings.
yeah, the sympathetic strings, or in Mohan Veena. But in violin, the tarab strings are really very new and really interesting. I can now can differentiate the sounds of the sympathetic strings in the violin and the sitar. You guys also use those strings according to your raga to create a different kind of a melody. We usually don't do that. We cannot actually, but that strings, those sympathetic strings,
help have
yeah,
special effect on
yeah,
the
true,
tone
yeah,
of the
completely,
band.
yeah.
Definitely. Okay. So, by my understanding, you are from the Maihar Gharana.
Yes.
And the Maihar Gharana also has the most 2 highlighted instruments of that Gharana is obviously the sitar and the sarod.
Sarod.
So I usually play the Imdad Khani Gharana style, which you already know. We actually have 1 less string than the Maihar Gharana because we don't have the lowest octave or the Ati Manda Saptak as you stated. So, but today, of course, I use this sitar, which is a Maihar Gharana sitar, for doing these tutorials because it's easier to keep for me in the studio. But in this sitar, you also have the ability to go that low, just like Baba Alauddin Khan's Sarod. He had 2 extra strings, and he could go really low. So you also play the Tanchakari Ang, which is also known as instrumental approach.
Yeah.
And also that is the reason why you have that extra string. Is that co-relevant? Because your gharana, the music, kind of does inspire going down that low.
Yeah, but when I was buying this violin, I had not any idea what that fifth string does. But I was really fascinated about that the fifth string, that a five-string violin. So I just bought it. But after buying this, I was maybe that was a few years ago. I wasn't able to understand our gharana music, like the lowest thing, because by your growing age, you understand the music. So now when I listen to Pandit Nikhil Banerjee or Ali Akbar Khan, the maestros who really play the low frequencies, so I find it, you can say, a need of that extra string which was introduced by Robin Ghosh. Now I feel that, yeah, we do really need that fifth string who plays the pasa pasa tuning, because there is no need of that fifth string if you are playing the sapa sapa tuning. So I feel that need, or you can, the necessity of this fifth string to play my style of my gharana music in the violin.
Okay. So coming to the actual music part of this conversation. So in Sitar Gurukul, we have already discussed a lot of things, but in their most basic forms, because it's really difficult to give out lessons that are customized for every single student out there. So the Sitar Gurukul channel, just like yours, is not really a channel where we expect that you're going to completely learn to play this instrument, but it should be enough to spark that fire in you. So to introduce the journey of further learning, or to introduce the journey of learning altogether. Having that said, we have discussed Yaman, this rag, starting from the alap. Now, I would, as I'm sure as well as the viewers of this channel, would like to know that how you usually introduce the first sa in violin in alap, because since we play the sitar, we do not have endless sustain. But then again, neither do you. What you do is a constant bow and not really a sustain. So, on the other hand, we rely hugely on sustain, especially the Imdad Khani way. So the type of instrument, the type of sitar, the amount of sustain or the resonance it has, or the overall tone, does play a major part in the design of my alap. But I would like to show you just a few lines of a very basic alap that I have also shown in this channel, and then I would ask you to do the same for me. So here goes a very traditional but also a very basic approach to Imam. So Sanghita, this was a kind of a sample of a very basic approach to how a basic sitar student would show the first sa. Just a few combinations of 4 or 5 lines. I would like to ask you if you could show us the same approach. Of course, the approach that you are usually playing, but a boiled down, very basic version of that.
As I can see, you have played the alap, and you have spent a little time in each note, maybe because of the sustain. In violin, we spend more time in one note because we have our bow to hold that sustain. So So this how we play or show our first sa, and we spend more and more time in one note and doing little slides which we say meet from one to another note, and we just slide, and then we reach to our final destination, the sa.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Sanghita. So now we are going to move forward to the element of jor. So, just speaking or talking about the term jor, I am instantly reminded of this amazingly definitive video of Pandit Nayan Ghosh. He, of course, plays exceptional tabla along with exceptional sitar. He was taking this workshop, I remember, and that whole video is on YouTube. I think
Yeah,
you
I do
understand,
remember that
yes.
interview.
So that video, he states that there are, I think, around 27 variations or parts that used to make up jor. But these days, or eventually, those 27 parts got shrunk into 3 parts that we still play. Does your jor also have 3 parts?
Yeah, be- because we belong to Mahar Gharana, and it is specifically known for its sitar and sarod. And the Drupadiya style of music. So we have that jor and jhala in our music, that 3 part, which is now very popularized. So the vilambit, the madhya, and
Yeah. So what we are going to do is I'm going to show you just the 3 basic parts, and then I'm going to ask for an explanation in your gharana and also a demonstration. So in our part, or the sitar part, when we play jor, we usually have 3 parts, but you also have 3 sub segments in each part. So the first part we call jor alap, which is alap with a pulse. This word I also got from Nayan Ghosh. He says alap not with rhythm but with pulse, because a rhythm has an end, a start, and a finish. A pulse does not, it's constant. So he used the term pulse for the first part of jor, which is jor alap. And then, of course, jor alap has, just like the way we play alap, where we divide 3 portions up. Just like that, we are going to introduce a very slow and steady pulse, and as we go along, keeping unlocking the rest of the areas, we slightly increase the speed. Eventually, moving on to Madhya Jor, which is the middle portion or the second part of the Jor, where we generally introduce a rhythm for the first time. So it's usually a count of 4 or a count of 8, and then eventually we speed things up and go to Jor Jhala, which is the infamous part, because most people would love the really fast paced Jor Jhala. So I'm going to give you a a sample of every portion I just stated, starting with the Jor Alap. And then eventually we speed it a little bit up. And then eventually we can go to Madhajor, which is and then we also sometimes take a rhythm and then play towns on it. For example, and then eventually Jod Jhala, which the version I played, I was heavily inspired by, of course, Ustad Shahid Parvez. But I think the first person to really seriously play Jod Jhala like this was undoubtedly Ustad Gulad Khan, starting with.
That was a really beautiful jor. Like sitar, we also have similar kind of the jor, alap, jor and jhala. Since our gharana is mainly focused on sarod and sitar, we also play similar stuffs. My Guruji has a very interesting style of playing the jor, as he really emphasizes on his bow. So I'm learning, it's on process, but let me show you how we introduced our alap, jor and jhala. Then we move forward with a little more speed. Then slowly we move to jhala, and we play some bow styles like. So this is how we divide our alap, jor and jhala. It's very similar to what you play on sitar or from our gharana sarod or whoever plays the tantrakari style.
Thank you for that beautiful sample and display of the jor. Coming to the almost the last part of this discussion, that I would like our audience to really understand the difference between how, if we both of us played a very similar composition in Yaman, I want them to understand the finer lines of the decisions that you and I separately take on the basis of the qualities of our instruments, on how that impacts the overall image of the composition. So I'm going to ask you to turn on the tabla, and then I'm going to play a little bit of a composition that I play and am also teaching on this channel, and I would do some vistars and probably make an introduction to a certain rhythm or a laikhari or just a material that I usually work on, and then I would ask you to do the same.
The thing is, in violin we have two major styles, the tantrakari. We also slightly play gaiki, but we mainly focus on our tantrakari ang. But who plays the complete gayaki ang, they play the vilambit ek tal. Nowadays, ek tal vilambit on instruments are rarely heard, but the family of Dr. N. Rajam, they totally and dedicatedly play the gayaki ang, and they have they have given a new dimension to Gayaki on violin, which is why all of their violins or the style of their playing is called the singing violin. So they play Ektal Vilambit, but I play the Masjid Khani Gat, which was popularized by Masjid Khan, with the usual Vilambit style. I am sure that Masjid Khani Gat is also played by you people.
You mean starting from the 1
The 12.
or the 12?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Sanghita. So I'm going to show you just the way you said, Amasid Khani Gat, which starts from the 12. So I could continue more and create much more complex variations, but just to give you an idea, this is how we generally start Vilambit, and gradually through variations in the composition itself, and then Vistars, and eventually grabbing on to some kind of a rhythm to play more tans, using that as a body. So my question to you is, does your approach also consist of similar patterns and techniques?
Because of our violin instrument, as I said earlier, we emphasize on one note. We can emphasize on one note for a longer period. We can stand on that note. we usually play, we start with Vilambit, and we try to go from one note to another, like to find more variation in between those notes. Then we usually play some lekari, of course, uh, triplets, then double or quadruple, like that. Let me give you an example.
Thank you so much, Sanghita. I could already observe that the lesser the speed was, the more different our approaches were. But as soon as we start to pick up speed, I guess our approach start to have more and more similarities.
Yeah.
I guess that is going to be normal and true for any other instrument, Indian classical instrument out there. So I hope that our viewers have enjoyed and understood as much as I did on the subtle yet very evident differences in both of these instruments and their approach, of course, for the tone and the design. On the next episode, for the tone and the design, and I would also like to tell you that when you're playing faster things such as Madhyalaya compositions or Drut compositions, and definitely Jhala. All of the instruments will have a more similar approach because most musicians, legendary musicians, they like playing alap and jor and eventually vilambit much more than they like playing anything else, because that is where the true musicality lies. As soon as you start to as soon as you start to go much faster, for example 200 plus BPM, that's where you start to show your skill more than musicality. So we are going to talk about the violin and the sitar, what they do in much faster scenarios, but we are going to save that for a later episode. On the next episode, in such a conversation, I'm going to have a musician friend who might be an instrumentalist or a vocalist, and we are going to talk to that person on how one would perceive Yaman. Thank you so much, Sanghita. So I hope that all our viewers and audience have understood the basic differences between the approach in Raga Yaman from both sitar and the violin. We are not going to extend this episode onto a drut and a jhala, but I would like to tell you that the differences are in every Indian classical instrument. You're going to see the differences in musical approach mostly till the vilambit, and as soon as you start to speed things up, it's going to sound more and more similar. But we're going to leave that conversation for a later date. On the next episode on this playlist, I'm going to invite one more such musician friend, and we're going to discuss how that person would perceive the Raga Yaman in his or her own way. Till then, take care and bye bye.